Imagine you're driving towards a destination you're not so familiar with, and so you decide, why not use the advantage of the fact that you have a GPS, and you decide, let me just key in, or rather type the destination so that I can easily access it without, getting lost. Because why not? So as you continue to drive, the GPS notifies you that it's actually 200 meters towards your destination and you needed to take a right turn. But you being you decide to look around and somehow you recall that this is a familiar destination. So, and you decide to take a shorter route according to yourself, you decide to take the left turn. So when you reach at the left turn, you now find traffic, and it was a very important meeting that you needed to go to. And you knew for a fair fact that you choosing the shortcut was going to help you. In reality, the GPS was very much right, because the GPS was leading you to the direction that you needed to be. But for you, you chose what you felt that was convenient for you. And this is actually how most of us are when it comes to God. We tend to tell God, God, please show me the direction. God, please show me your will. God, what are you saying in this situation? When God decides to direct you, start questioning and be like, you know what, maybe it's not the right time to obey. Maybe, God is actually saying something else. Or maybe we just try to ignore it because we feel like it's not perfect timing, and we decide to do it based on our feelings. You see now how frustrated you are. Yet the GPS for sure tried to direct you towards a very good route that you should have used. But now you chose to follow you. And this is just us as human beings. We tend to overpower what God wants for us with our own feelings. And then when life tries to become hard, we start telling God, oh, you're not even listening to us. It's like, God, you have your own favorites. Why me? Why me? But today we are getting to understand that obedience isn't meant to be comfortable. Obedience is actually a choice that you and I have to just choose. Yes, God has given us the free will. I used to ask myself, maybe God is looking for perfect people. But I've come to realize that God is not looking for perfect people. God is actually looking for willing people. People who are willing to make the right choices, even when it feels uncomfortable. And each and every day, you and I know we are busy making different choices silently. We are either looking at, should we leave this relationship? It's no longer serving what God wants for me. You understand? You're either asking yourself, should I forgive this person? This person has really wronged me. Should I forgive this person? You are busy asking yourself, should I quit this job and start ministry as God has said, or I'm going to lose a lot? You are busy asking yourself, am I going to live my present life all for Jesus? And there's actually no certainty to how life is going to be in the future, because it's all in God's hand. So today we want to ask ourselves, are we going to follow God, or are we going to follow our feelings? Are we going to be people who are going to focus so much on how we feel, or how God, is directing us? Because remember, He's the author of our life. And you see, the more we delay, the more things continue to get tougher and tougher each day. Hi besties, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's your girl Ashke, and this is the Unscripted 20s, where we help women navigate through life not as experts, alongside Jesus Christ, ourselves as a community, and also alongside our big sisters who are always here on the comment section. If you like it here already, you know what to do. You hit that subscribe button, like, share, and comment. And each time you share our video, always know that you're one step to making the kingdom of God bigger and better. So make sure you stay tuned and enjoy the conversation, and also let us know what you think on the comment section. So one thing for sure we can say is that every day we are presented with the free will to make choices. So I don't even know what kind of choice you're making currently. It could be a relationship. It could be a job. It could be, your way to Christ. It could be your way to salvation. It could be, you trying to navigate through friendship. You trying to navigate through your walk with God. So each and every day we are presented with choices. But now, the question now comes back to us. Are we really going to follow ourselves or God's will? And if we follow ourselves, how sure are we are still going to land, in God's right will? You understand? So you're going to navigate different characters in the Bible. These are characters that you're so familiar with. So you're going to see how their actions actually cost them or how their actions actually benefited them. Because remember that obedience is not supposed to be comfortable, but obedience is supposed to be a choice. So one example that you all are familiar with is the story of Jonah. Jonah seems to amaze me every single day. This guy, for a fair fact, he really had God, because God was instructing him, you're going to go from where you are to Nineveh, and this is what you're going to do. I'm sending you to go and preach the gospel of God. So this guy actually had the voice of God clearly. He was not confused. He knew that, God was actually instructing him to go to Nineveh. He actually decides, you know what? No, I'm not going to go to that direction. I'm going to book my ticket and go to a different destination. So when this guy reaches, when the journey is continuing, I don't know if they were in the middle of the journey, you can tell me down in the comment section, you find that there was a storm. And people look at this storm as punishment. And I want you to see differently. Sometimes we tend to see storms in our lives because God actually loves us more than our stubborn nature and decides, you know what, let these storms come so that you can have a redirection and follow God. You understand? Yes, and that's why sometimes when you find yourself in a difficult situation, just like Jonah, you tend to find that you will look at the face of God. You will pray more during those times. You will call upon the name of God. And like those times when you're just enjoying your blessings. So most of the times we tend to see storms as God punishing us, but some storms really are just situations or other scenarios where God is trying to direct us towards him. And that's what happens to Jonah. Even when the storm came and people decided, you know what, he has to be thrown to the ocean or to the sea, and then he was actually swallowed by the whole whale. People were thinking that, that's the end of Jonah. Even if somebody throws you into the sea, you would feel like, that's the end. But God wanted to make Jonah be at a point where, he's remorseful and is accountable to his actions. So instead of God actually permitting the whale to eat Jonah so that he can actually die, what God did instead, the whale actually did what? So the whale vomited Jonah instead of eating Jonah. You understand? So it actually says that, sometimes God loves us too much that we do not see, that he makes, the whales or the storms come so that we can be able to see him. To see that, this journey we are taking is not a good journey. And since we have refused, and God knows and loves us too much to direct us towards our purpose, he does it forcefully. And if you've heard about my story, you guys can see different scenarios where God has really removed me from the wheel because I decided to follow my own path. You understand? There are so many times where I would have died, but God decided, you know what? I am actually going to remove you. Yes, I'm going to cause storms in the middle, but I'm going to remove you out of that situation. You understand? I can really mention so many. Like that time when I was almost, when we were in a road accident and, the car overturned, I felt it was God's mercy because I would have broken my limbs. I remember going to the doctor and one doctor said the opposite. And then the other one said, you know what, you're not broken. I was really frustrated during that time because I didn't want to lose my legs. But God actually helped me because he had a perfect purpose for me. It was not that I was a good girl. It was not like I had done very good things. And that's why I'm saying, like, obedience is a choice. If I was to advise you, my sister, I don't see the point of you allowing God to push you by force towards his direction. Sometimes just obey. It's a choice. Just obey. Even when it's uncomfortable, just obey. Because at the end of the day, God means well for you. At the end of the day, God means well. So Jonah wasn't eaten up. Was it by the shark or by the whale? Someone can tell us on the comment section. He wasn't eaten. And after that, Jonah actually realized that he had done wrong and he still went to Nineveh. So however you choose, however path you choose, you're going to take longer time to reach your destination. So this is actually telling us, you and I, that if we choose the longer route, which is disobedience, we are going to take so long, to reach at our destination. Because maybe Jonah would have just arrived, gone to Nineveh, and worshipped God, and spread the gospel of God, and many people would have been saved, and it would have just been well with him, and maybe his life would just have worked out. So for Jonah, he chose the long route. He had to be swallowed by the shark so that he can know that he was actually doing wrong, and so that he can reach at a point of remorse, and God is like, what, let's direct, let me direct you to Nineveh. You have now realized that, what, I'm capable of finishing you before you even finish. I'm capable of finishing you if I wanted to, but I am choosing mercy because I see you have a greater destiny. So many of us are at that point where we are still struggling to make the right choice. We are still struggling whether to go to Nineveh or not to go to Nineveh. But we are being told by, like Jonah, we should choose obedience even when it wasn't, the best option for us. Because I feel like, okay, for Jonah, I was like, it's a new place, as we were talking yesterday about how we are so familiar, how we choose familiar spaces, and we are not so used to moving to new locations because of maybe the comfortability. So for Jonah, he was looking at, what, I'm not ready to start over. It's a new place. I don't even know how I'm going to start. I don't know if the people are friendly. How do I even start preaching the word of God? And for him, it was a lot. So he chose to follow what he felt it was good, only for him to see himself in a boat stranded. And the people around him, were so keen to know that, what, this storm is not ordinary. There's somebody who is in this boat, or rather in this ship, that is making us face all this. So they decide to throw him in the sea. You can imagine. So I do not want you to be in that situation where you have to be thrown in the sea. Imagine, so that you can listen to God. How ashaming is that? How ashaming is that? We love ourselves too much that we tend to ask ourselves that, oh, what, this is how I feel. There's a way you want to drag yourself based on how you feel. Today I don't feel like I want to obey God. Today I don't feel like this is the standard of God. But God is trying to tell us, leave that alone and understand that I am the one, that is the author of your life. Okay, we are going to be talking about different people. So make sure you're liking the video, make sure you're subscribing, make sure you're sharing this video, because we want to see different people and how they navigated all this, and see, are our emotions, are our feelings justified, towards obedience to God, or we need to leave that aside and just choose obedience, whether it is right or wrong. We want to talk about another figure. This is somebody we've said, oh, he's the father of all nations. And before he was crowned that title, imagine God telling you that you needed to go to a foreign place you do not know of. That's how the journey of Abraham starts. He's told, what, you need to go to a foreign land that I'm about to give you. He knows no one. And most likely it's a new land, so he doesn't even have people he knows, or there are not even people there. It's like you're being told to go to Garissa right now by God. You don't know even anyone. You don't even know if the weather is going to be suitable. For Abraham, what mattered to him it was God sending him. It was not how he felt. It was not how, his emotions were at that time, but it was about how God wanted it to be. So So the journey of Abraham starts at that point where we see him as the father of faith. He's moving from a place that he's familiar with to a place that he's not familiar with. And he chooses, what, I'm going to go there. So when he's there, they still do not have a son and they are getting old. So when Abraham and Sarah were in their new location now that God had sent them, there are some angels who came and told them, what, despite of you being old, you're going to have a son. And this son is going to be called Isaac. And so when they're on this new land, Abraham sees people that were coming, and I don't know, he didn't know that they were angels. He was just hospitable. He hosted them and told Sarah, you have to prepare some food because we have visitors. These angels told Abraham that him together with his wife Sarah were going to have a son called Isaac. And you see, when Sarah heard about all this, Sarah laughed because, she was looking at her state. She was a very old person, being told that she was going to do or she was going to get a son. And you being an old person, you would say, what, you're past that childbearing stage. You don't even have the much stress. How is it going to, you don't have the much strength. So you are asking yourself, how is it going to happen? But God still was so faithful that even when Sarah laughed, she still carried her blessing. And now we want to go to the point where now Sarah has gotten Isaac, and now Isaac is that blessing that they had been promised. So tell me why God now tells Abraham, I want you to go and sacrifice your son. And Abraham, being Abraham, you can imagine how difficult it is. We prayed for this person. We prayed for God to give us a son. And now all of a sudden, God is taking the son. And so Abraham just went in obedience. He was like, you know what? Either way, it is God who has given me this blessing. So they went, and as he was placing, Isaac as the sacrifice, God decided what? No, I'm providing you with a ram. So sometimes when God is pushing us towards obedience, it is not meant to take away what God has already blessed us with. So when you see God put us in such situation like that of Abraham, where we are placing the exact blessing God gave us, he just wants to know, are you the right candidate to handle that blessing? So if Abraham would have maybe disobeyed, you don't know what God would have done. So sometimes God places us in that situation to just know, are we to place us in that situation so that he can understand, are we able to handle the kind of blessing that he has given us? So I want you to position yourself in Abraham's shoes. If God had taken you to the place where you have to now release back to him the blessing you've been praying, I don't know for how many years, I don't know what you're trusting in God for, and then now you have to release it back to him, would you have done it, or would you have chosen, to follow your feelings? Would you have done it? Honestly, let's know on the comment section. Would you have done it? So Abraham, instead of sacrificing his son, God gave him a ram. But if you would have followed, but if Abraham would have followed his own insights or his own feelings, he would not have obeyed that. And maybe it would have been worse. Maybe they had actually lost Isaac. But that's not what God did. So when God is trying to instruct you to do certain things, it's not like he means bad. He actually means well. And actually, this is also telling us that sometimes when God is removing something, or is telling you to surrender something, maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's a friendship, it's because he knows that there's something ahead that is better. Because God would have chosen, actually you will sacrifice your son, but God was not like that. God was like, I have something better. So right now, you're looking at me, there's something God is telling you to forego. Maybe it's a habit, maybe it's a friendship, maybe it's a relationship, maybe it is, I don't know, you name it. But you're not ready to surrender because you're still holding on to, maybe I'm going to miss this. You're looking at the many times you've prayed about this issue. But God is trying to tell you, I'm going to give you a safer landing. And then there's something I want to also continue and want to go. And there's also another character that I want you to also look at, Peter. If Peter did not get out of the boat, he would not have met Jesus. But Jesus told him, the only way you can actually see me is by you getting out of this boat and walking towards me. So many a times, we just want to be in familiar spaces. We don't want to be in situations where God is telling us, get out of this place, and follow me. You will start asking yourself, do I even have fear? Do I even, have people I know there? I'm leaving this job and then what? I'm leaving this relationship and then what? Do you know? And then you start asking God questions like, do you know, God, how long I prayed for this man? Do you know how long, God, I prayed for this season that I'm in? And then you're telling me to forego. Do you really know how it has taken me for me to actually be in this situation? I prayed so long that, for so long that I even look like a drunk person like Hannah. But you're telling me to get out of my boat and start walking towards you. What if I sink? Peter was able to tell God, Peter was able to tell God, what if I sink? If I sink, I will lose my life. Me, I don't want to lose my life. I am too young, I am too young. Sometimes I tell my mom some things and I'm like, maybe I'm too young. No. You are meant to obey. I want everyone to be at a point where you don't overthink so much. It's Jesus telling you to get out of your boat and walk on water. It is not Njoroge. It is not John who is telling you. It is Jesus who is telling you. So why are we always questioning God? And that's why yesterday we were talking about that your biggest blessings could actually be outside that room that you are actually afraid to leave. You understand? So the problem is we overthink too much. Especially us ladies, we need to be in our feminine energy. But most of the times, we are always questioning God. God, do you actually know how I prayed for this? You're telling me to surrender this job and rely on you. You're telling me to surrender this job and just be a preacher. And the way I see preachers, having this and this and this and this. So God is telling you to stop overthinking and understand that He's the one who made you. When He's trying to tell you, go towards this direction, I want us to be at a point where we do not even question Him and ask Him a lot of questions. We just move, Let people think we are crazy. And I feel like obedience, when it comes to obeying God, sometimes it sounds like a very crazy journey because He's telling you do this, you're just doing it. And I've said this is something you and I need to work on. We need to be at a place where we can stop overthinking when God is telling us, you know what, I have a better plan for you. You want a kingdom spouse? I will give you a man who will worship God. Yes, who will worship Him, who will take care of his family the same way Christ took care of the church, who will love you the kind of love that is unconditional, but you have to be celibate. You just tell God, okay, I'm a human being and I love this thing, but because you have said, and you are the maker, and you are the God who understands my emotions, my body, and every other thing, I leave it to you. And that is where, by the way, let me tell you, that is the place where, for me to even start practicing celibacy, I had to be at a point where I'm so honest with God. I told God, you created my body from my mouth to everything. I am being honest with you today. What you're asking me is hard, but because you are the one who has said I should, give me the strength to be able to overcome what I feel like is too hard for me. And God listened. One thing about God, when you're so honest with Him, and this is one attribute we need to learn from King David, he was not a perfect person, but he knew his way to God. And as I told God, above every other thing, renew my heart, renew my spirit, renew my mind, that I may just think like you, because when you are thinking like God, you'll realize that, you know what, after all, if God has said this relationship is not working, He actually means that He has a better plan. When He actually says that this friendship has to end, He actually has a better plan. But the problem is we tend to so much overthink, and when we overthink, you know what happens? We tend to minimize our chances of getting closer to what God has in store for us. Honestly speaking, imagine you're so locked in that room that you feel like, it's the better place, the most comfortable place. And it could also be a ministry. Just getting out every single day and choosing, you know what, my full lifestyle will be fasting. My full lifestyle will be seeking the face of God. My full lifestyle will be telling people about the goodness of God, whether they cannot see it on my face, whether they can, whether I'm facing this, I am telling people about the goodness of God. It takes a lot of emotional maturity, spiritual maturity. And I always say something. As if you're able to obey without having your emotions as the first, everything else becomes smooth. If it is the marriage you're asking for, you'll be able to submit. Your husband will also be able to, to love you God's way. You'll be able to be a good leader that people are like, you know what, we can actually follow his example. And I want to ask you today, if you are truly obedient, have people ever asked have you ever reached at a point where people are asking, which church does this girl go to? The way she speaks, which church does she go to? I really want to go to her church. When you're at your workplace, do people always ask you, which church do you go to? Or you are the kind of people that people do not even want to associate with you because when they look at your character, there's no way you'll tell me your patience and you do not obey God. So today I'm here to remind you, obedience was never meant to be comfortable. Obedience is a choice. So which side are you on? Are you on the side of your feelings? Are you siding with the Lord? Are you on the side that you understand that it was not you who created yourself? Are you willing to, if you are not yet there, are you willing to be honest, with God? And if you're not yet there, are you willing to be honest with God and tell God, but I want you to help me with this situation? Because God is a loving father, and that's why I was like, we need to establish a good relationship with God. God said fear him, but he did not say the fear that when you hear about him, you should run away. You should be able to tell God, I understand this is what you want me to do. Help me, God, to establish, a bond of contention, to understand that my feelings do not matter anymore. And that is how God has helped me to understand that. You know what? When it comes to relationships, nowadays you meet especially right now, we are in courtship. You meet a very nice guy. Honestly, this guy matches everything that you want, This guy talks nicely. This guy is sharp. This guy, has, money. This guy is good. Everything that a woman wants. But then you look at it and you're like, when you start seeing things are shaky, you remember that there's that part of you that always feels like, you should fix things. And then you remember if it's shaking, then God is saying it is time to leave. It's time to take your high heels. I always say that it's time to take your high heels and do what? And shift out of the relationship. For me, obedience is from the minute things. God knows I love. So God has placed me at a situation where I now know, however much I like this guy, as long as God has not approved, I am not boarding. When I start seeing, the conversation shaking, I just know God is trying to do away with the guy. And sometimes you might even meet a very good person. You are having conversations. And then you go, every day we always tune in for our 7 a.m. prayers, with our papa. And you find yourself in a situation where that person now disappears, that person doesn't talk to you, that person maybe, starts acting up, and you realize, okay, I understand. It reaches a point now you realize, okay, then I have the mark of Christ. What did I expect, So when things are falling apart, you're just like, okay. And then sometimes you're so used to obeying to a point that you're like, God, but I like that guy. Why did you let that guy go? You'd have at least let that guy, know me, kidogo, we laugh. But God is like, at this point where you have matured, I don't want you to be at a place where just any Tom, Dick, and Harry can have you. So if it means for me to shut the conversation within the first few hours, I'm gonna do it. And tell me, guys, that has always been me. Like, most of the times I found myself in situations where I don't even understand how these guys don't end up talking to me again. Especially when I decide, what, we have talked today, now I'm going to the altar of fire and I'm telling God, okay, there's this person who has come in me. I find them not talking to me again. Or sometimes we have a conversation with a guy and I tell them, for me, God has to be at the center of my relationship. If you are supposed to do this courtship and see how it's going to go, because me, I'm dating for marriage. If you do not follow God, I'm telling you, God is going to eliminate you. And they think it's a joke. The moment God realizes this person is a counterfeit, they don't even stay. Like, you find like within hours, you're no longer talking. We didn't argue, but you're no longer talking. Like, relationships and you're obeying God are now much easier because you do not have to worry about being heartbroken. You are actually heartbroken. Is it heartbroken really? In the initial stages, you feel heartbroken, but as you continue to progress, you realize that God was actually protecting you from something. So you don't end up getting heartbroken. And that's why people ask, like, why do people who are in waiting, especially those people who are waiting for marital settlement, they have to wait for so long? It's because when it comes to God, he wants to prune you to a point that you understand that his will is everything. And then he makes you know that, this is what you need to be. And this is the kind of a person that you need to match up with. So when it doesn't align, you're always just ready. Sometimes God is a very strict dad. You might be laughing with a boy outside, outside your compound. When you come back, that boy is never going to talk to you again. Imagine. Always remember, there is something you told God. And you told God that you wanted a friendship that was a kingdom friendship like that one of David and Jonathan. So God listens. But the problem is when God follows, what is best for you, you try to question him. And that being said and done, if you really enjoyed our conversation, remember to like, share, and subscribe. And I would urge everyone on the comment section to write, obedience isn't meant to be comfortable. Obedience is a choice. So that every person who gets into the platform and watches this video, they are able to know that today we are talking about, so that anyone that tunes into this particular video, they'll be able to learn something. One aspect, that obedience isn't meant to be comfortable. Obedience is a choice. I love you guys, and I hope that you picked one or two things from these daily conversations here, the Unscripted 20s. Remember to share this video, and always remember, guys, that our main aim is to seek the kingdom of God first and his righteousness, and the rest shall be added unto us. So this is a platform that will continue to motivate every girl, whether in waiting or generally somebody who's trying to find her way towards spiritual maturity. It's a work that we are doing it imperfectly, and we are doing it through and unscripted, each and every day, taking one or two lessons that God guides us. I love you so much. Thank you for always supporting me. Thank you for always being here. And let's make this platform a home for every Christian girl. I love you guys. See you on the next one. Mwah, mwah, mwah.